"Well, Marianne," said Elinor, as soon as he had left them, "for one morning, I think you have done pretty well. You have already ascertained Mr. Willoughby's opinion in almost every matter of importance." "Elinor," cried Marianne, "is this fair? Is this just? Are my ideas so scanty?" "My love," said her mother, "you must not be offended with Elinor. She was only in jest. I should scold her myself, if she were capable of wishing to check the delight of your conversation with our new friend." Marianne was softened in a moment. Willoughby, on his side, gave every proof of his pleasure in their acquaintance, which an evident wish of improving it could offer. He came to them every day. He was exactly formed to engage Marianne's heart. They read, they talked, they sang together. His musical talents were considerable, and he read with all the sensibility and spirit which Edward had unfortunately wanted. In Mrs. Dashwood's estimation, he was as faultless as in Marianne's, and Elinor saw nothing to censure in him but a propensity of saying too much what he thought on every occasion. Colonel Brandon's partiality for Marianne, which had so early been discovered by his friends, now first became perceptible to Elinor, when it ceased to be noticed by them. She saw it with concern, for what could a silent man of 35 hope, when opposed by a very lively one of 25? Perhaps she pitied and esteemed him the more because he was slighted by Willoughby and Marianne. "Brandon is just the kind of man," said Willoughby one day, when they were talking of him together, "whom everybody speaks well of, and nobody cares about." "That is exactly what I think of him," cried Marianne. "Do not boast of it, however," said Elinor, "for it is injustice in both of you. He is highly esteemed by all the family at the Park, and I never see him myself without taking pains to converse with him." Little had Mrs. Dashwood or her daughters imagined when they first came into Devonshire that so many engagements would arise to occupy their time as shortly presented themselves. The private balls at the Park then began, and parties on the water were made and accomplished as often as a showery October would allow. In every meeting of the kind Willoughby was included. Elinor could not be surprised at their attachment. She only wished that it were less openly shown. This was the season of happiness to Marianne. Her heart was devoted to Willoughby. As Elinor and Marianne were walking together the next morning, the latter told her sister, with the greatest delight, that Willoughby had given her a horse, one that he had bred himself on his estate in Somersetshire, and which was exactly calculated to carry a woman. Without considering that it was not in her mother's plan to keep any horse, that if she were to alter her resolution in favour of this gift, she must buy another for the servant, and keep a servant to ride it, and after all, build a stable to receive them, she had accepted the present without hesitation, and told her sister of it in raptures. "He intends to send his groom into Somersetshire immediately for it," she added, "and when it arrives, we will ride every day. You shall share its use with me. Imagine to yourself, my dear Elinor, the delight of a gallop on some of these downs." Most unwilling was she to awaken from such a dream of felicity, to comprehend all the unhappy truths which attended the affair, and for some time she refused to submit to them. As to an additional servant, the expense would be a trifle. Mamma, she was sure, would never object to it, and any horse would do for him. Elinor ventured to doubt the propriety of her receiving such a present from a man so little, or at least so lately, known to her. This was too much. "You are mistaken, Elinor," she said warmly, "in supposing I know very little of Willoughby. I have not known him long indeed, but I am much better acquainted with him than with any other creature in the world, except yourself and mamma. It is not time or opportunity that is to determine intimacy. It is disposition alone." Elinor thought it wisest to touch that point no more. She knew her sister's temper. Marianne was shortly subdued, and she promised to tell Willoughby when she next saw him that it must be declined. She was faithful to her word, and when Willoughby called at the cottage the same day, Elinor heard her express her disappointment to him in a low voice on being obliged to forego the acceptance of his present. "But, Marianne, the horse is still yours. though you cannot use it now. I shall keep it only till you can claim it." This was all overheard by Miss Dashwood, and in his addressing her sister by her Christian name alone, she doubted not of their being engaged to each other. Margaret related something to her the next day which placed this matter in a still clearer light. "Oh, Elinor," she cried, "I have such a secret to tell you about Marianne. I am sure she will be married to Mr. Willoughby very soon, for he has got a lock of her hair. Last night after tea, when you and Mamma went out of the room, he took up her scissors and cut off a long lock of her hair, kissed it, and put it into his pocket-book.